All right, man. Today is Tuesday. It is February 28th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It's myself, Eddie. I'm joined alongside Chief. Chief, how are you today?
Doing great. Feeling good.
Doing great. Doing good. We got another pick six for you. So 6 topics. If you guys are kind of new to the show or whatever, basically we pick up 6 news topics. We spend about 5 minutes or so on each, and we just kind of keep it rolling. Yeah, quick little rundown. Yeah. Because that's what this show's for. Keep people a little bit informed, so you're like, yeah, I heard a little bit about
More
that.
than a headline, less than an article. That's that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you guys are busy. A lot of people are busy, and there's a lot of shit going on.
Right. So I'll read it. I'll try to interpret it, give you my take on it, and you guys pick up the good, leave the bad, whatever you want.
Yeah, before we really jump off, if you're watching on YouTube or even if you're just listening, St. Patrick's Day merch is out. I'm holding the Irish Car Bomb hoodie, and Chief is holding the Nobody Does St. Patrick's Day Like Chicago crew neck that comes in gray and black. Go check that out. If you order now, I don't think I can guarantee it'll be here by March 11th, but I'd say you still got a decent shot.
And then, the holiday is the 17th.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Not just, for some of us, it's not just like, people like you appropriating our culture for a day. The 17th actually means something.
The winner of the Irish shit draft. Don't forget that. So
because you did it by picking things that appropriated the culture. So,
but all right then, here we go. We will lead off our pick 6 with it being kind of official.
Yeah,
that they're saying COVID-19 was made in a lab.
Only took us 3.5 years, whatever, to get there. So that was the thing from the Department of Energy that they released, that they think their most likely outcome, or most likely origin, I should say, was from the Wuhan lab. And if you're wondering, like, well, why the fuck do we care what the Department of Energy has to say about this? I guess one of their duties is overseeing the safety and protocols for different labs all around the country. So they would actually have the insight of, like, what is the proper way to do this safety-wise, this and that. So they actually did have the tools and the resources to investigate that. That was their conclusion. It's kind of interesting that it's the Department of Energy and the FBI have both said that they're not everybody in the government is in lockstep on this, but those are 2 pretty prominent agencies, I'd say, and they're both saying that they think it is actually the lab leak hypothesis, which is unfucking believable.
And it was picked up everywhere. The New York Times had this, the Wall Street Journal had this, USA Today. Everyone's publishing it now. I know this was a...
Do you think they'll all get deplatformed for that?
Well, that's what it was before, right?
Right.
It was largely... I wonder if YouTube is going to catch on. I wonder if this is going to get a strike, or
probably
if, we're gonna get. I know. Spotify does like the search
more
for
YouTube
COVID-19, whatever.
Too.
Yeah, which I understand. Yeah. You should definitely read the articles and be more in on it. But
should you? That's what I mean. That's where, like, when you have the public's trust and you don't value it or adhere to that, to actually go out of your way to do the research and tell the truth. Well, then if you put that disclaimer at the bottom and I click on it, and it's like, oh, well, here's this article from the Reuters, the CDC, whoever. Well, it's all the same people who are saying that you're, a conspiracy theorist or
if you say it,
or a
yes,
racist.
Correct.
That was, remember that? It was like, oh, you're only saying that because, and Stop Asian Hate and all this stuff. It was like, if you're saying that it's a lab leak, well, then you're all the worst things and you're deplatformed and you're dangerous. So it's like, but now it's the official record of the government and some of these agencies. And everybody, if you read everything through, there were people pointing to this lab leak theory out of the gate.
Yeah,
because
it says most likely still. So that's
that gives them some wiggle room.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
sure. But there was indications that you could see how they were progressing with this kind of gain of function research, and it's like, well, if you just put this into that, what is the cleavage site thing, where it's like that was just the next step of their tracing. So, but people are like, nope, like they decided that there was an official record. It was the wet market. And it's now 3 years later, they're finally coming. And it's not like they wanted to. It was Congress was saying that they were going to use the subpoena power and basically go through all the documents themselves. So these were leaks from classified documents that led to these reports in the Wall Street Journals and New York Times and everywhere else. And it was the only reason they got leaked is because they were preparing for these congressional hearings. So it's like they didn't even really still want to say it, but it was their hand was forced.
But
so
when these hearings happen, it's going to be
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. I've become like very jaded, where it's like I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think everyone is to an extent.
Well, I think if you lived through the buildup to the Iraq War in 2003, followed by what happened in 2008, followed by this, and it's like, well, who the fuck can you trust about anything? And it's hard. Like I read now, every time I read something, I'm like, well, maybe. You know, that's kind of like and where I feel like when I was younger, it was like, oh, well, this person or this agency said it, and so it must be
legit,
must be true. And now I don't.
Yeah,
there's not one person where they say something, and I'm like, good, I believe it.
Was there anything in particular about this besides, them just saying it in the first place?
Yeah.
Jumped off the page for you?
Yeah. Well, jumped off the page. Yeah. I thought that the timing was kind of interesting, and just like the way that it was like still like tooth and nail, and wasn't like we're finding the truth. It was like we're releasing it this way to kind of cover our own ass. I think we're at the tip of this still, because if we, like you said, you do go through those congressional hearings, people are going to be questioned under oath again. And it's like, well, like Fauci. Okay. And it's like, did he push? I mean, he was pushing these things, and he said, under no circumstance, like he used very direct and harsh language when questioned under oath in front of Congress during this thing. And now it feels like there is proof that he knowingly lied under oath, and as did others. So that's perjury.
What's the consequence?
What's the consequence of that? So I'm very, very interested to see how that all
plays out. Yeah,
because I feel like this is one of those things where, you almost like you can't, like Woody Harrelson got in trouble on SNL. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
So he did a opening monologue, and at the end he's like, I had this script, and it mentioned Nick Palazzo, who was the guy who did True Detective with him. And he's like, I saw this script, and, it was like, basically it was this dystopian thing where everybody on the planet was forced to take this vaccine and this medicine to treat an illness, and it didn't really work. But if you said, but you couldn't, it was basically like talking about COVID.
Yeah.
And it was, and went after Big Pharma, like, in his little.
And this was in a sketch, or this is monologue?
From Saturday Night.
Yeah, but was it like
in his monologue?
Oh, okay.
In his monologue.
So was this off script, or did they know he was doing this?
That I don't know.
That's interesting
but it's still on the YouTube, so you think like they at least have control of that in post. But it was like, and then if you do like a Twitter search for Woody Harrelson, and it's not like anything he said was like super inflammatory or wrong, but you see like how Rolling Stone, Woody Harrelson spreads anti-vax conspiracies during SNL monologue. Woody Harrelson spews anti-vax conspiracies in rambling SNL. Huffington Post, Woody Harrelson rambles about weed anti-vax conspiracy. So it's like they're trying to like, but it's like is it? So that's what I mean. It's like, so it's like
I didn't see what he said, so I don't know for sure. But.
Yeah, but it was like the thing that he said that he's getting in trouble for was probably 10 seconds long at the end of the monologue. It wasn't like but it was like, hey, maybe we should actually think about this. And it was like, nope, he's a crazy person. All the mainstream people being like, he's a crazy conspiracy theorist. For how dare he say that at this point? So it's just like, it's tough. It's like, how do you?
My last note before we move on is that the best tweet I saw was I feel bad for the guy who we thought ate the bat.
Yeah, like remember White Sox Dave wanted to murder him?
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, if I could go back in time.
Yeah,
that was a draft where if you could go back in time and change you could go back in time to witness something, but you couldn't change it. And Dave said in the 5th round, after we had been doing it the entire way, I'd go back in time and punch the COVID bat guy in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It was probably just a guy from the COVID lab shopping at the wet market. That's what it sounds like now. Like he if it came from the lab, that's where they would do their shopping. It was in Wuhan, it's right down the street from the wet market. Like, no shit. Like, some of the original, mass spreading incidents happened right at the place where they all shopped.
Out there, yeah.
So the word wet market, like, kind of grosses me out.
Yeah, I think
wet
it should.
Things that are wet. Like, I'm sure there's nothing wrong with wet markets, like, in general.
It's just
like you want your, like you want your You want your food to be dry and clean. Yeah. I don't know.
Next topic here is the CDC. This is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They said there is a drug-resistant stomach bug going around.
Yeah. So it's called, I'm probably going to get the pronunciation wrong, but shigellosis, SHIGELLOIOSIS. And there's annually about 450,000 cases per year. To treat those cases, it costs about $93 million, which I guess in like the grand scheme of healthcare costs is probably not that much, but it's like a pretty intense stomach bug. And the crazy thing about this is that this has been a thing that's been around for a long time. In 2015, there were 0 reported incidents of this shigellosis, and I apologize for the reading, that were drug resistant. So 8 years ago, 0 cases were resistant to the antibiotics needed. This year, it's been, or 2022 rather, 5%. So you went from having this bug that was like very unpleasant to a bug that now is like, well, it's like a super bug because we don't know how to kill it. And it's just like it kind of has to run its course more or less because the antibiotics that they've been using on it historically are not working in 5% of the cases. And it's 5% of, 450,000 cases, not that bad. But if that number jumps to, let's say, 10% next year, and they still don't have a modified antibiotic to treat it, well, then that becomes a problem because not only is this a bad bug, it's also considered like highly contagious. Like when you read through it, they're like, all right, like no sex. If you are a worker or, if you're a faculty member or a student in a school, don't go to school. Like don't go to these places where you're going to be spreading it. Wash your hands thoroughly, kind of like the COVID playbook. And like don't go in swimming pools. Like you can get it. Like they're telling you to be very cautious because if you develop this bug and there's just no medicine for it, well, then you're more likely to spread it too, and on it goes.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any deaths or anything associated with it, and at least not that I saw. But it's like a concern, and it's a concern. Like I kind of extrapolated out where it's like this is a problem for this particular bug, but like people will probably be okay.
Yeah.
But if
it's the next bug,
and then it's also like what else could this same line of thinking where if you have like, I thought about it, having it go to crops, okay, where because there's so many of these staple crops, corn, rice, wheat, barley, etc. All these like things that we eat, that we get most of our calories from around the world. Those are owned by big ag. So like that is intellectual property. Okay. So 500 years ago or 200 years ago, you'd be growing corn. I'd be growing corn. You live in Illinois. I live in Iowa. But in theory, we're growing 2 different types of corn.
Yeah. And
if some bug comes through that can wipe out your corn, my corn's probably going to be okay. Now, because they granted intellectual property to all these different companies that they basically own the DNA of these various seeds, and 90+% of these different crops are all the exact same type of crop. Well, now if it's like, hey, your farm's fucked, but I'm going to be okay. Well, now it's like if it gets into one person's crop, it's going to go everywhere. And you're already kind of seeing this where of those crops that I mentioned, those kind of staple food crops, up to 40% of those of crop yield losses are due to food pandemics, we'll call it, like crop pandemics that just sweep through and they just like, hey, our harvest wasn't as good because we had to burn off this one area because we realized that it was diseased.
Yeah.
So we couldn't eat and those things happen. Like, again, you don't care about the Irish, but like the potato famine, that was just like they had a bug that got into the potatoes and made them inedible and poisoned. So they couldn't eat them, and then millions of people died, and millions of people moved to America, and that's why we have St. Patrick's Day here today, is because they were escaping from the British Isles, which the British were exporting food while that was going on. That's neither here nor there. But they just didn't have their staple crop because they had a virus get into it. So that's like a real thing that if it can really decimate an entire population, lead to famine if it wipes out all these crops.
Yeah, it's a larger discussion too when it comes to antibiotics and people that don't finish them and how it's just kind of adapting to all this stuff. It's really one of the more scary things, in my opinion, going on right now.
I agree.
And that's something that I'd be interested in having a larger conversation. Maybe that's its own episode. If someone's listening out here, maybe like a doctor or an antibiotic specialist that can speak more on that, we'd love to have you on. So reach out if you do.
There's all kinds of crazy things going on. Like they do like poop transplants. You heard of that?
No.
So like you have more bacterial cells in your body and in your gut than you do human cells. And I think it's probably pretty wide margin. It's like 3 billion to 1 billion or something like that you have that much bacteria in your digestive tract. And that's so like when you eat corn or whatever, you're not really eating it. You're putting that into your body. The bacteria gets on the food and extrapolates out the nutrients, and that gets absorbed into your system for fuel. But you're not really actually like you have an apple. There's no apple bits in your bloodstream. And in your cells. It's the bacteria processes it into usable energy or usable nutrients, and that gets absorbed out. So if you have this issue where you don't have enough gut, like I call it gut biome, they will inject you through your rectally. They will put poop back from someone else's poop up your butt and into your gut.
I don't like that.
So better than dying.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but that is something that they'll do. They'll take a healthy human gut biome and inject it into your butt and your asshole. Jesus. So you have the ability to digest and process food properly.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, but it's because like we've become so because when you take an antibiotic, it also wipes out your good bacteria in your gut that you need to live. So if you've taken antibiotics or you're on them habitually for something, or you have some other kind of medication that wipes it out or situation that wipes it out, it might not just be from medicine. That is a treatment that they have because it's so essential to you being able to live. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Next topic here. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, and it kind of was trying to use the right terminology here. I don't want to use the word I was about to use, but it kind of took off. But It's East Palestine train derailment.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's some things that are happening from that, which everyone thought.
Yeah. So, but we don't really know yet.
Yeah.
And it's like the same old playbook where it's like, yeah, like the Norfolk, hey, like we'll get some people to do some testing. And the EPA, we'll get some people to come in and do some testing. They hire this company. Everything's fine. You guys can move back in. And then people start having symptoms. And then people are like, well, who did they hire? Well, some consultant. Well, what have they done before? Well, they got hired by this other company who their job was to basically be like, yeah, everything's fine. So you pay this. It's almost like the same thing as '08, where it's like you're like Mooney, okay? Like you're paying the rating agencies. So it's like the banks pay the ratings agencies, and if they don't give them a good rating, well, then they'll sell their, the rights to do the ratings to some other rating company and prop them up. So it's like these companies or these independent consultants did this review that said everything was fine. But then the people who live there are being like, I'm not fucking fine. I'm not fine. Like I'm having headaches. I'm having rashes. I'm having all these things. So then Texas A&M University, they did an independent study, and their findings were in contrast to what the EPA and this other consulting agency that does the testing put out. And they're saying that so the EPA's thing was that there shouldn't be any short-term issues. They didn't really mention long-term issues. Texas A&M is saying, well, there are short-term issues, and you're seeing it. So the initial report was that there were 3,500 animal deaths. Now that number is up towards 45,000.
Good Lord.
Okay. And some of that is fish in the water. Some of it is cattle. Some of it is other livestock, pets. But you're seeing, and this is just like a 5-mile radius in the immediate surrounding area. So it's not like, oh, well, we have the rainwater, whatever, went everywhere, and we're seeing these impacts. Like, no. And then they did this test where they found 9 chemicals still at levels that long term would create that would be carcinogens. So you would have eye, lung, skin, all sorts of issues from these chemicals, these particulates being in your water, in your soil, in your, all these different things. Like it's a very hard thing to clean up. And it's like they're trying to make it seem like everything's going to be fine. But it's like these things take time to test properly. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but it feels like there was a rush to send everybody back because it would be, can you imagine if that disaster was like, hey, we have to buy up everything in a 15-mile, you're talking like millions and millions and millions of dollars. Who knows, maybe billions. If you're talking about medical expenses and damages, plus like the loss of property value and all these things, like it's a lot. So you probably want, if you're the legal department of Norfolk Southern, you probably want to avoid that as best you can. So it's interesting to see how this will play out. And the only guy, have you seen this guy who's the mayor of the town? He's the only, so you have all the politicians are on both sides of the aisle are basically like, yeah, I think everything's fine, except for the mayor of East Palestine being like, and he's a character looking guy. Like you should, KB had like a funny little monologue on him, but it was like, like he's screaming from the top of his lungs, like this situation is fucked. And everybody else is saying like, well, we'll see. Or they're saying everything's fine. So it's going to take a while to figure out, but right now things still look pretty bad.
I mean, he would know too. Like he lived there. Like there's got to be some pretty transparent differences.
You would
right?
think.
You would.
Yeah.
I would think. At least.
You would think.
I don't know for sure, obviously.
Yeah, and like
But if you lived before and after, like
that area, yeah,
there has. I would think that there's something that
totally. And
tangible.
it's just like let's say we're going on a little cross country trip to Pittsburgh. And you're hungry. You want to pull off at a farmer's market in this area?
Nope.
Exactly.
Nope.
Okay. Because there are long-term ramifications for these pollutants that got loose during this train derailment, and the way that they handled the cleanup is crazy. So it'll be interesting to see how it play out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. Next topic here. It was reported that the U.S. is sending more troops to Taiwan to kind of position themselves as tensions are rising again with China.
I don't know what to make of this situation because everybody, which is probably the theme of this episode, which I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so China got pissed. I think it was over the weekend. We flew a particular type of military plane in the strait between Taiwan and mainland China, and they're like, their quote was, China says U.S. has endangered peace with Taiwan Strait fly through. So they're just buzzing towers, buzzing over that area, which China's like, that's our shit. And then the United States and Taiwan basically are like, well, we were over international arms, we weren't doing anything wrong. So it's like don't do that, but it's like, hey, well, we're not doing anything. And then the same day, if you were, going through research, the CIA chief said China has doubts on its ability to invade Taiwan. It's like, I don't even like that you're looking into that. It's like, it's like, how does Nigeria feel about invading Cameroon? Well, no one would you'd rather just have it be like, well, no one thinks about it. So who cares? But it's like, this is a very hotly contested thing. And maybe that's a real report. Maybe it's, hey, I'm just going to put this out there. Like, who knows? But it felt like odd timing to have this fly through. And then the next day being like, yeah, our station chief over in China, the head of the CIA, China doesn't think China can take over Taiwan. So it's like, what is the purpose of even saying that publicly? Unless someone's like, unless that's just to like downplay the whole thing. But like the other thing that's been going on lately is that you have a China, Russia, Iran alliance going on. They're doing naval drills together. They're sending these like suicide drones to Russia to use against Ukraine. So like those three countries who are all like the United States like bugaboos, I would say, the big bad wolves in at least the last 20 years, those have been like our three kind of geopolitical rivals, I would say. They're all cozying up together. So I thought that was like that's all going on at the same time. And it's almost like we're isolating those three either monetarily through sanctions or just through words, but we're kind of pushing them all together in a way. Like it's an odd move. And then there's that guy who made the rounds. He was on Rogan. He's been on a ton of places, and he was Peter Zeihan. He's a geopolitical analyst. He said that China only has 10 years left with this CCP party, whereas the ruling party, because their whole economic system is going to collapse. And it's something that we kind of talked about with like the population decline here, but it's more dramatic there because he believes that they lied about their population numbers by 100 million. And then, they have this whole generation. So they've had this one child policy for a long time. So you have they're a very old country. And then they also had the one child policy led to a disproportionate amount of males because culturally Chinese people were like, well, if we're only going to have one, we better have a boy. So our name and legacy and everything carries on. So that was always, that was the thing where you were to adopt children from, young girls from China. That was a thing in the United States, 90s, 2000s. It was even in that show Modern Family, like the two gay dads adopted the girl from China. So they have a harder time, like even though they've rescinded that one child policy, well, so you just have less people able to procreate, and their economy's not doing as well as it was. It's not growing at the rate it was. So, which we've talked about with Evergrande. Housing crisis with Evergrande, and they have all these other things. Someone sent this to me, and I feel like we've talked about it before, but they had all like these fucking ghost cities. Do you know what those? We talked about those. Do you remember that?
A little bit, yeah.
So they would build like a fake Paris and a fake London, but kind of in the middle of nowhere because they're trying to get people out of the East, which is where I think 90% of the population lives, like in the East, and move them to like, it's like almost like a Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And they just never came. People just, because the opportunity just never ended up being there. So they had like these fake, like knockoff versions of these different cities. And they would have like an Eiffel Tower, but then nobody ever moved there. So you'd have like a city built to hold 1 million, and it would be like, 45,000 people. So it was like a very weird, it's like every time I learn something about China, it's like, that's odd.
It's probably pretty interesting to go through.
You would like that.
I would. Yeah. It's like a fucking house of wax.
Almost, yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how this, I'm just ready. I want everything to just be fine and normal. Like, can we just stop having everything be
when Strauss Holland, end of this decade?
I think it was 2030 is when it's supposed to end.
Right,
so
we're not 7 more years, 8 more years.
It's just white knuckling every headline that comes through.
Yep.
Because, I don't know. I don't really love the idea of a Russia, China, Iran alliance.
Nope.
Not good.
Nope.
And I also don't like the idea of a war between the United States and China over Taiwan.
Nope.
All the semiconductors in the world, like 90% of them are built in Taiwan.
Wow.
Not great.
Yeah. Topic number 5. There are more big tech layoffs. Stuff going on at Twitter. I believe there's stuff going on at Meta as well, right?
All of them.
Yeah.
And some of this is just a reality of the economy. Inflation's out of control, interest rates are up, and it's like you can at a big level like that, you're more inclined to have more people employed when rates are zero, because it's like whatever, it's like rates are zero. So Elon reportedly in his most recent round of layoffs, between 50 and 200 got laid off. The numbers are a little sketch on that still, but the one that was included was this woman. And if you do a search, he's just always, I feel like I just typed in Elon. It just says, oh, Elon is trending. Oh, per unusual whales, Elon Musk is the richest person in the world again. So shout out. Good for him, I guess. But there was that woman who was like the only part of the old guard who ingratiated herself with Elon. And she had this tweet go viral about like what it's like to work on the new Elon thing, or she's just like on her office floor sleeping. And then she was in this latest round, be like, you're out. But the other thing that's interesting, because Google has had to lay off thousands of people. Meta, same thing. And Amazon's the same way as well. Google has laid off 12,000 people. 12,000 people.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. But now it's like they're getting crushed by their own creation because these companies, and they're not alone, it's not just big tech, but they're using AI algorithms to process things like productivity and where there's, where the fat needs to be trimmed. So it's like, hey, like I wrote this great algorithm to help us like trim people. Okay, let's put it in work. Oh, it says, oh, we should fire you. You're fucking fired. So I think there's a lot of that going on with Google. Amazon does the same thing with their algorithms, and they really do it for like processing for warehouses and who should be where, and like everything is just so designed by artificial intelligence. And there was a survey done of HR workers, and they said that 98% of HR reps said that software will help them make layoff decisions this year. 98% will be like, well, we can't just, it's not like the Office Space movie where those two guys come in and they interview everybody, be like, why are you not productive this week? Oh, well, my mom died. Okay, well, okay, all right. Hope you feel better. But now it's just like, yeah, your productivity's down, out. So that it's like a weird thing. Like they're getting eaten by their own creation.
Yeah.
So,
which I think people were probably nervous about when they were doing that shit.
I think it's like, this is like the, what is it? Prologue to like Terminator. Like Chat GPT comes in, and if I feel like these are making more headlines because normally when you hear about layoffs, it's usually blue collar, and people, I don't know, it seems like people don't care as much about those. But these are all like good paying white collar jobs that people are losing. So it's like, holy shit, like we have this 12,000 people who were making $100,000 a year or more are now unemployed. And nobody is hiring people in their industry, and they're being replaced by, AI who can do their job more efficiently.
Yeah, it's interesting how everyone thought that they were going to go for the blue collar jobs first, and now it's
like it would be robotics.
Now the white collars kind of getting hit by these.
Yeah, so that's another thing where it's like, then let's just say this continues with the economy and more jobs getting reduced. You're going to have like this massive population of people just like nothing to do and nowhere to go, and what do you do with them? So
I don't know.
Adapt or die, I guess, but it's
scary.
It's very scary.
Last topic here is today's the day. It is February 28th of the Chicago mayoral election. Obviously, I talked to some people on Friday, so we figure we'll cover it a little bit here in 5 minutes. Do you have any thoughts leading out here?
Yeah, I think
because I'm locked in.
Well, why don't you start then?
I'll be watching intently tonight.
Yeah.
I got a bocce game, but after I'll be
after that, when they're doing the vote counting.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be watching. I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. I really don't.
I think you kind of do, right? You kind of think there's going to be
a top five. There's a top five, I would say, but like
it feels like there's a top a top three. That's how it, like you follow it more closely, but it feels to me like there's a top three.
What you're following?
Chewy, Vallis, and Lori.
Yeah, but then Brandon Johnson's still hanging around there.
Okay.
Willie Wilson, like
what's
I think
the number
he's always
you
going to
have
gobble up like 10% of the vote.
What's the number you have to get?
You have to get 50% to win straight up.
Yeah.
If not, they're going to take the top two, and there's going to be a runoff, I believe, on April 4th.
Only two?
Yes, only two.
Okay.
Could go to the runoff. I don't know, man. I truly don't know. If I had to make a prediction, it's going to be a runoff. I agree with that, which everyone's saying, because 50% is just a large amount to get. I think just the way that it's trending, like I'm looking at polls here, a lot of them have Vallis in the lead. But depending on where you look, Lori, Johnson, and Garcia are all kind of mixed throughout.
Clustered together. 2
through 4. If I had to make a prediction today, I would say the runoff is probably Vallis, and I think he's almost, I don't want to say a lock because you can't do that shit, after, especially everything. But I think I would guess that he makes the runoff.
Where did he finish last time?
He got crushed.
Yeah.
He got crushed. Out of the 14 candidates, I think he was in like 10th or something.
Okay.
Yeah, he did not do well at all. He did very poorly. And I think Lori probably, man.
I know.
I think if I had to guess. But then, to me, the biggest wild card is Chewy. I just haven't heard a whole lot
I finally started seeing ads for him again.
Yeah.
But it felt like he was like, this is how much we have left, and I'm not going to really be doing anything or saying anything, and I'm just going to do
well,
it
that's
at the
what they're
goal line.
saying. Is he kind of was playing the laying low strategy.
Yeah.
And
which is a strategy. I mean, that worked for Biden.
Yeah.
So
for sure. So we'll see. Interested to see. Obviously, Brandon Johnson is a lot of CTU backing and whatnot. So
well, that's what I was just going to say. And I, for some reason, I thought that the CTU would maybe flip an endorsement or something like that if he was, but he still has their endorsement. And I mean, his plan is basically like taxing people in Chicago is not enough. We got to tax suburban people who come in here to work. So that, and they're planning to raise $800 million. So it's going to be, it matters. It matters, this election. So we'll see. But his thing was reinstating a $4 per month employee on large businesses in Chicago. So, and that's basically like, no matter where your employees come from, you're going to be taxed if,
that's on his website you're reading that from?
this is from illinoispolicy.org.
Okay. All right. I don't know for sure because I know when I had him on, like he was kind of going back and forth. I haven't read completely about his policies and whatnot. But I don't know. I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens because it's a big election and you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. You got any prediction?
Who do you think will be
the two?
I think it'll be Vallis. I think it'll be Vallis and Lori.
Vallis and Lori. That's my prediction too.
Which is crazy because it's like I don't know of anybody who's like banging the drum for Lori.
Like that's a diehard Lori.
Yeah. Like remember how like went with Obama? People fucking loved Obama. They would do and kind of how people are for Trump too on the other side. Like there are people who are like they got merch, like that's the old he's a comedian, but he's like I'm going to start judging politicians by how much merch they can move. Like those two guys, they move merch.
Yeah.
And I don't think Lori, no one's like proudly sporting a Lori bumper sticker or T-shirt or something like that.
No. Nope. So I don't know, man. I'm fascinated. I'm particularly interested.
When would the runoff be again? April
4th, I believe it is, on Tuesday. So they have like 4 or 5 weeks or something after that.
Yeah.
But Chewy, I'm fascinated by him where he falls in the line here because, like I said, it's just been so quiet. But and then I don't know, man. Maybe Willie sneaks in. I don't know. Like between the five,
it seemed because there's so many, and I felt like last time like Lori had people that coalesce behind her.
She did. She had the big Sun Times endorsement.
Right. But even some like the support for the other candidates, kind of like how we saw with Biden, where it's like, hey, like Mayor Pete, you're going to be transportation secretary. Kamala, why don't you back off? You'll be the VP, and like you just kind of create a team and like you do some horse trading. And it feels like that has to happen at some point. Like it's like, hey, like take your support and throw it behind me. Because,
I mean, if that would have happened last time, it would have been a very different story. I think because there were just 14 people who ran, and everyone was just kind of stealing,
cannibalize each other.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Like Big Ten basketball.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I don't know. We'll see. I'll be watching intently.
You got a voting booth down there at that bocce.
I already did.
You're an early voter.
Yeah.
Okay. All
it's a way to go, dude. People that don't early vote, I don't know what you're doing.
I like the process.
Do you?
It's romantic.
So you're gonna go Tuesday? You're gonna go today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. To me, it's just like I was in and out, and I only voted for there's only 5 things on this ballot. It's much different than the last one.
Yeah.
So all right, that's it. We'll see. We'll be covering it along the way, but. That's all we got today, right?
That's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. Like and comment this video. It helps us out, I believe, on YouTube.
I've heard other people say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if you can, that'd be nice.
Yeah, exactly. We appreciate you guys watching, listening. And if you like these pick sixes, let us know. I think it's good to have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on.
Also, spoiler, I just smoked Eddie in trivia tonight.
We haven't recorded yet.
I'm about to smoke them.
But we'll see. But yeah, thank you guys again for listening and watching. We'll be back tomorrow. We will see you then.